July 22nd. Any corrections on the meeting of the 14th? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve.
Mr. Lapoli made a motion. Second?
Second.
Second by Scar. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Unanimous. The Maintenance Subcommittee of the 22nd, any corrections? I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Make a motion.
Motion made by Mr. Rigney, second.
Second.
Scar. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstaining? Unanimous. Okay. This is the time for the school committee to hear public input. School committee welcomes public comments, but this is not a time for questions or debate, and personal attacks will not be tolerated. Is there anyone who would like to address the committee at this time? Would you please give us your name and address?
My name is Maggie Marshall, 2 Draycoach Drive. I came before you last October to express my concern about the layoff of Valerie Diggs, high school librarian. I felt that laying off the sole certified professional school librarian at Chelmsford High was a giant step backward in offering a quality library program for Chelmsford High students and teachers. I also felt that it was one further step in the systematic dismantling of the school library program. Hiring anything less than a certified professional school librarian to head the high school library is like hiring a paralegal as the head lawyer in a law practice or a nurse practitioner as the lead in a medical practice. These individuals possess a certain level of ability and expertise in their respective fields, but are not intended to supplant lawyers or doctors who have much more education and training. I feel that it is also unfortunate that the hiring was not left to the new Chelmsford High principal, who was in place in plenty of time to conduct a proper search. The Chelmsford High School Learning Commons was a heavily used place of learning and recognized nationally as a state-of-the-art facility, thanks to the leadership, energy, and vision of Valerie Diggs. In order for this to continue, and for Chelmsford High School to keep its accreditation, I urge you strongly to conduct a proper search for a certified professional school librarian. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak? Okay. I guess that's the end of public comments. Do we have any good news?
We always have good news.
Of course.
So school's starting, just in case that's good news for us. So teachers are back in the building. They're starting to get their classrooms together, so that's very exciting. Next week we have our new teacher orientation, so we'll be with all of our new teachers, introducing them to everybody in the district, central office, their principals. They get to work with their mentors, with department coordinators, and most importantly, our freshmen will be at freshman orientation next week on the 25th. They'll be meeting their mentors, spending the day at the high school, and with lots of events and exciting things for them. So good news, everybody's coming back.
That is good news.
I'm just making a notation of that, so I remember. Thank you very much. Dr. Lang, would you like to start us with a new business?
Sure. Thank you. I have 4 pieces of new business this evening. The first, I wanted to share the news of the appointment of a new principal for Center Elementary School. Right at the end of the last school year, as I was transitioning in and the school year was coming to a close, the former principal had given his notice that he was going to be taking a position in another district, which can be challenging for staff and families, particularly when that occurs over the course of the summer. So we advertised for the position and did some significant recruitment and attracted quite a good range of candidates for the job. We had received actually 22 responses to the position. Internally, the other 3 elementary school principals were fantastic. They stepped up over the summer and helped screen candidates with me. We selected 6 individuals to come before a panel to be interviewed, both parents and teachers at the school, and that took place at the early part of last week. Interviewed those candidates and ultimately selected Kelly Rogers to lead the school. And Kelly comes to us, ironically, from the Stowe Elementary School the Center Elementary School in Stowe. So the name isn't going to have to change for her. That worked out pretty well. Prior to that, she was the STEM curriculum coordinator in the Littleton Public Schools at the elementary grade level, which I think is significant for the center school in Chelmsford. She had worked for a number of years as a professional development consultant for the Concord Consortium, which has a very good reputation in the education industry. And at the very onset of her career, she was a 5th grade teacher at Hudson Elementary School in Massachusetts, not New Hampshire. So she's very excited about transitioning. She actually helped out this morning with Assistant Superintendent Hirsch doing some interviews for the open kindergarten position at the school. She'll be starting in the district full-time next week. She's tying up some loose ends in Stowe this week, but very excited to have her on board. I think the staff and the parents very much appreciated her thoughtfulness in her answers and her responses, and we're very excited to be working with her as well, so I wanted to share that good news. Where this is her transition week in Stowe, she'd already had a previous commitment for this evening, so I have asked her to come to our next meeting on September 1st so that I can introduce her to this committee and she can say a few words. But very excited to have her on the team and to have that full admin team assembled at this point as we get started for the school year. So thank you.
If you,
If I may I just wanted to commend Dr. Lang on his communication, not only with the center school community on the process, but with the school committee. It was nice to know what was going on and who were the members of the committee that was part of the selection, and it was very open. Thank you very much.
Okay. I very much enjoyed it, and we'll follow that same course of action in the future for other administrative openings when they become available.
Mr. Chairman, just to reiterate exactly what Barbara is talking about and follow up, big congratulations. Also, just want to let the community know that there were 5 parents that were involved in the committee. There were 4 members of the staff and 3 principals. So this was a 12-person committee that got together. So you want to talk about, opening it up to the public and making sure everybody was on the same page. I just want to commend the strategy that we had, and just to let everybody know that the community was a big part of this process. They had the most people at the table. So congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you, Linda.
if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to just go back to the public input section for one second.
Sure.
I'd just like to reply to the speaker. We don't normally say very much in regard, but I just want you to know that the committee and myself had concerns about the library appointment, and there are continued discussions going on about possible directions and so forth. So I don't want you to think by our silence it's a dead issue. Okay.
Great. The second item under new business is a budget transfer request as we're getting into the start of the school year. Again, formality-wise and format-wise, I'm not sure what the committee is used to receiving, but this would be a standard request that we would bring forward in my previous district. As we're getting into the start of the school year, there is a position at Chelmsford High School that was funded as a part-time science assistant position. This individual, according to Dr. Hirsch, would be involved with helping prepare the science lab preps, managing chemicals, things of that sort in the high school. And they had budgeted at halftime last year, and at some point during the year realized that the halftime staffing just wasn't sufficient to keep up with the demand from the teachers in the school and also the students. But when the budget was locked in December, that change hadn't been noted. So as they were getting ready to go back into the start of the school year and they're looking at staffing, they're realizing that it's going to be another scheduling issue this year. So they were requesting to, within their budget at the high school, within their science budget, basically reallocate the other half of the salary And again, when I say it's a full-time salary, the full-time salary for the year is $18,900. This isn't a $100,000 kind of admin salary. It's very much for an individual that's working directly with teachers and kids, helping to prep for science. And it was budgeted at $94.51. So we basically would have to add the other $9,000 to make it a full-time position for the start of the school year. And the high school has identified within their science lab, their textbook account within science, that they can make that transfer, and it would not have a detrimental effect overall in their program, and then it would be really critical to have this person assume the role full-time. So the request before you this evening is actually to approve the funding of an internal transfer, and I look at these transfers as within a budget line or a budget book. If you're transferring between a salary and a non-salary account, those are transfers that require the school committee's approval. If this were within a teacher salary account and you were transferring from, say, one teacher to another, you wouldn't necessarily need committee approval. But I always seek approval anytime it's a salary to a non-salary account item, which this is. So basically, I've laid out the transfer below. It'd be transferring $94.51 from the Chelmsford High School Science textbook account to the Chelmsford High School Science Lab Assistant account, and it would let them advertise and then fill that position on a full-time basis as they start the year. Happy to talk further, and Dr. Hirsch is here as well to talk about the merit if there are questions. But I provided that backup and would love to have the discussion with you this evening about that.
I'd like to entertain a motion to the effect of the transfer.
I make a motion to make the transfer to allow more hours in our science department.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
What's the cut in the textbooks?
The total amount of what's
No,
gonna be?
what's
There's
gonna
not
be
gonna
cut?
be any cuts, because what I did is I worked with Dr. Bayronovan. We did a little bit more negotiating with the textbook company, and then with curriculum adoption line, I was able to fund what he needed. So there are not gonna be any issues
Is the
with,
curriculum adoption line a different line than this?
yes, that's
than the
my
science
adoption line. I
textbooks?
have curriculum textbook adoption lines.
So we're creating a hole in the science textbooks line, and that's being filled with
My
revenue
line.
from your line, which is not, which
It's
is,
textbook to
it's another
textbook.
transfer, but it's not crossing, the
Right.
salary.
And I'm not even gonna
non-salary
transfer the money.
balance.
We're gonna purchase the textbooks from the
Right.
textbook line.
So Lynn, you were, Dr. Hirsch, what you just said was, you went back and you renegotiated to get a better price, and that's where the money was saved?
We saved some money in a renegotiation with the publishing company, and we were able to take the monies from curriculum adoption to fund what they need, because it is brand-new textbooks.
How much was the renegotiation and the savings? off the
I'd
top
have
of
to
your
go
head?
back. Usually what we do is when we negotiate with them, it usually comes with their shipping costs. So typically right out of the gate, they want 10% with shipping. We usually always push back and go to 7.5. So we probably brought it down, only because Dr. Bayronovan and I have done this a lot of times. We can get them down to a 5% shipping. So there's where the savings usually comes.
Silly question, but what about the rest of the textbooks? If you had this much success with the science books, are there other opportunities to negotiate?
Oh, absolutely. We do it. We do this all the time. So that's what happens. We know that they're going to come out with a certain percentage right out of the gate. We know where we're going to push back and then where we're going to meet in the middle. And also the other piece of that, when it comes to textbook adoptions, or even when we receive stuff, we get free materials. Especially, we make sure that they take care of all of our special ed needs. We're not paying additional monies for any of those materials, so they usually give us some more perks when we're negotiating with them.
So through negotiations and a little bit of the ability to move some money around, we were able to add a half a teacher. I can say it that way, Dr. Lang,
Just support the person.
Support person.
to the program, at no cost to the taxpayer.
Well, I
Other
think the
than
cost of
for
the
the money.
taxpayer. But, no additional, we're not looking for additional monies.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking.
We're working within our budget.
Perfect, thank you.
Further discussion?
I
I'm
think,
sorry.
to Mr. Rigney's point, there's certainly a portion of that is going to be the savings from the, say, cutting down the shipping. There's also just another element of having to prioritize the purchases that Dr. Hirsch has for the year, and just realizing that at the high school, this particular need outweighs the purchase of something else to an extent.
Right.
It's not a total wash. I don't want it to appear that way. But given the scenario and it appears the scheduling and the severity of the need, for this position. It just outweighs the balance of the other adoption.
Okay,
So that's,
I'm good with that, and I think that's a good way to talk about it, that
Right.
you're given some flexibility with the budget so that you can make choices like this as we go along through the year.
I just want to say, I was contacted by the science department at the high school, and I had the pleasure of meeting with them. And this was a major concern. This cut was, it really impacted them. They wanted me to know that this was a priority for them. So I'm glad to see that it's addressed. This is, I'm sure it's a great relief for them.
Further discussion?
The only other thing I have, and I've broached this subject with the superintendent already, is that while I very much appreciate the attitude here that's being exhibited, in a sense, it's unnecessary because we still have not voted a line item budget, and that needs to be, in my mind, a priority for this committee.
Do you want to proceed tonight with this, or do you want?
I think we probably need Ms. Cresta here for that. I'm content to do that at the next meeting, but if you'll recall, we had this discussion back in May or June, and Mr. Antonelli was of the opinion that that was something that he'd prefer to leave to the incoming administration. I think we were all good with that approach. I understand how it is that we are at this point, but I just want to reiterate that for me that's a priority. It's part of getting a better handle on the budget overall. It's not something we've ever done in the past, so we need to kind of push ahead a little bit. It's not embedded in our routine yet.
I would
just,
go ahead.
Mr. Chair, from my perspective, and Mr. Rigney emailed me today on that. I wasn't aware of that, that was kind of a holdover item from the transition team. And Ms. Crester and I have been working off the budget line items actually as previously presented. She is on vacation this week. Next week we'll actually get together and we'll formalize and finalize the final document, and we'll put it on for the September 1st school committee meeting. So you will have that. I just wanted to be able to start to track some of these requests for expenses, and I had assumed that had already been approved. So we will put that on in September, and we can make notations to the budget, these transfers as they go, so that we can keep a running log. And then that should be helpful when we actually go to establish the budget for the following year, because you'll have the history and you'll have the rationale behind some of the requests that come in.
Right. I think, again, we are changing the way we do business with respect to the finances, and this is something that really ought to be done after the budget after the bottom line number is approved by town meeting. We should set a line item budget. We chose not to do it this year because we knew we were entering a period of turnover. I think, and so I understand that as we embed this into our routine, we'll do this again in the spring following town meeting.
So you don't think we need to table this motion? We can go forward with this?
I think in a technical sense, they have the freedom to do whatever they want because we haven't set any line items. I think the administration is coming forward. They're being proactive. They're behaving in a manner that we want and we're trying to encourage. I'm happy to vote on this, at least as a vote of support.
Okay.
But I just want to make sure that we don't lose track of the fact that we do need to establish a line item budget.
I guess I'd like feedback as to whether you're comfortable with this or not, because I'd rather not go to a vote and have it defeated, because it would send an incorrect message.
I'm comfortable only because we are being told of the transfer and
Yeah.
we're voting on the transfer.
Yes.
So,
Okay,
I feel the same way.
Okay.
I'm comfortable.
okay. All right, then. Motion's been made and seconded to approve this transfer. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It passes. Okay, next.
Thank you. On to the third item under new business. And this did result in a lengthy talk at the last school committee meeting. There were several public speakers as well as school committee members that had raised some concern about the recent hiring and selection process for the librarian at the high school. So I went back to Ken, our HR director, and asked him to summarize for me the different actions that had taken place. And I prepared a report for you that highlights the kind of the chronology of events. The HR director indicates in the packet has information that supports that the high school librarian position was posted internally and externally last spring on 2 occasions, once in April and then once in May. The first time, anecdotally, the first time the position was posted, there were a handful of applicants, according to the HR director, possibly 5 or 6, of which only 1 applicant was certified. The high school principal at that point in time decided he needed a large pool of applicants, reached out to the 1 applicant who was certified and indicated they were going to be reposting the position, that they were going to move that person to the next pool. They didn't have to apply again, but they wanted to cast a wider net of candidates. They advertised the job a second time and only attracted 2 or 3 more people, none of which were certified. So the high school principal went back to the 1 candidate that had applied from another district that was certified, and that individual had since taken a job in another district and was no longer interested in the Chelmsford position. Mr. Cleary, the principal at the time, was then getting, this is early June, ready to post the job for a 3rd time when he received a letter of interest from Mr. O'Sullivan, who had been a teacher in the district, who had seen the first 2 postings go by, and he had actually applied for a transfer under the contract to a position at Parker Middle School for the year and had accepted that position. But he saw that there was an opening at the high school. It didn't seem like they were filling the position, so he reached out to Principal Cleary, just indicating that he would be interested in being considered for that position if the principal was interested in having a conversation with him. Principal Cleary did meet with Mr. O'Sullivan and then subsequently sent a memo to Superintendent Tiano indicating that he felt, given the difficulty they had in advertising the job twice with a limited pool of candidates and the fact that this individual has stepped forward with interest and some knowledge of the high school, recommended that that individual be hired into the position. Superintendent Tiano then directed the HR director to offer the position to that individual, which he subsequently did in an email that is also attached to this packet. So that is the kind of the soup to nuts explanation of what happened with the posting for this past period. I know, personally, I have spoken with some existing staff in the district and the union and others that were just kind of very concerned about the, I guess, the timeline and kind of who knew about the hiring and whatnot. And people had some very valid concerns and opinions. I met earlier today to share my findings with Ben Cole from the Teachers Union to let him know what I had found as well. And, he expressed their concern as a union about process and different points that they were uncomfortable with. One point being in the teacher's contract, I guess there's a clause that I'm still trying to get up on, that if you do accept a voluntary transfer into a position, that you're supposed to be in that position for 2 years before you can transfer back. It appears that there was, this individual was allowed because of the shortage to make that transfer anyway. That is a point that the union is kind of contesting at this point. And where it really stands, kind of procedurally, whether we like it or not, the principal of the school under ed reform has the right to make a recommendation and to make a hire. Whether they should have deferred to the new administration coming in or not is more like our wish or our desire, but they actually legally had standing to make the action that they did according to the statute. The question of contract then comes into play, and what I've asked Mr. Cole from the union is if they are going to make a formal grievance to this at this point, having all this information, they need to do so in writing, they need to follow the grievance procedure that's outlined in the contract, and they need to actually state their grievance, and they need to state the remedy that they're seeking, and I would await his action to do so if the union decides to go that course. And then I would take the matter under consideration and make a ruling based on that matter as presented. But formally, statute-wise, I wanted to at least get you the information I had at that time, so that would be out there. This is what happened, and kind of waiting for the union's response at this point. So happy to answer any more questions, but I at least wanted to shed some light on the hiring process with you that I at least knew or came about to know.
Does anyone have questions?
I have one question. You mentioned that he was a teacher in our district. Was that as his position as the library, in the library? Because he didn't Is that a teaching position? Is that considered teaching?
I don't know what his particular position in the
He was a
district was.
technology specialist.
It's still a bargaining position that's covered
Okay.
under the contract, so it would have, regardless of the title, it would have the same ability to transfer under the contract language.
And do you know if anyone else in the district who was in a librarian position was asked to?
No, I
apply?
did ask that. There were no internal candidates under either round that applied for the position that were certified to hold the library position. That I did find out.
Any other questions or comments on this issue? Okay, as soon as you get settled, we can go on to the next one.
All right, we'll go on to number 3. This is an information response that actually developed at the FinCom meeting a week ago Thursday. Just as a way of information, I know Chairman Thomas and Mrs. Scar were at the meeting as well. Who was invited to the FinCom meeting to introduce ourselves and have a discussion, Michelle Trester and I, to talk about the interactions between the school committee and the administration and the FinCom. Very nice meeting, very nice introduction. And at the very end of the meeting, a resident had spoken about their concern about what appeared to be purchasing at the central admin office of all new furniture in the buildings and costs and what could possibly be, purported to be, cost of tens of thousands of dollars to outfit the admin building with all this new furniture. I went back and I did talk to Ms. Cresta, and again, one of the things that I would like to use as kind of a public tracking mechanism is if the resident does have a concern, they can call, they can email, or they speak in a meeting, bring their concern forward. We will put a formal response together. We will list it as a line item on the agenda, so historically we could always go back and track it. But we actually did find that statement was not true. The district did, in the part of the budget process that was approved by the committee, hire 2 new individuals at central office, one in the HR office and one in the business office. And both of those individuals necessitated purchasing 2 new desk setups. So ironically, we did purchase order was cut for 2 new desk setups, but they haven't even arrived yet. There was a considerable amount of movement within the building. The HR office and the business office switched places. The student support office and the curriculum office switched places. So there was a lot of commotion at the end of June within the building. Perhaps perception-wise, it may have looked like there's a lot of stuff coming and going from the office. The other thing we did receive, a local company had donated some furniture to both DPW and the schools, some office furniture. And we always accept donations of furniture if groups have them. We always send a letter of thanks and whatnot. So there was some used office furniture that was donated to the district that came in. But the total actual orders of furniture basically amounted to about $2,500, and that was for 2 setups for the 2 new employees coming in. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that inquiry, get that information out there so that these things don't linger. And I very much, what I had planned, again, as a course of action where that came up at the FinCom meeting, I was going to send a copy of my report to the chair of the FinCom and ask him to share it with the members because it did come up there. But again, I think it's important for the school committee to have those responses as part of your agenda. So historically, you can always look back if someone does raise a concern that they know that it is being addressed and it's being responded to in a timely fashion. So I offer that up as a response to that. And I'm not familiar with this individual, but I actually will try to contact her and get her a copy of the response as well, just so that she can feel responded to.
I just want to say, Mrs. Jackson has spoken in front of our committee several times and asked many questions. And as Mr. Thomas said at the FinCom meeting, if we don't have the answer on the spot, the answer is we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But we do our best to get the answer following up. I don't know if she was ever contacted with the answers that she was looking for, but I don't think there's been any concentrated effort to disregard her questions. I've met with her several times
Right.
and answered as many questions as I could, but as I said, if you don't know, you don't know.
Right. Well, I agree. I think the other thing is too, just so that everyone gets the information at the same time and it's timely. If I had just say responded to her or had a conversation with you, the rest of the committee wouldn't know. So I just think it's important that when a response does go out, it goes to the whole committee. It actually gets listed on an agenda so that there's a history to it. And that's a practice that I'm used to that I'd like to carry over here to the district. And I think it could be helpful in the future if these things arise.
Excellent.
I think what's a little challenging is, Chairman Thomas was there, so wasn't, Ms. Starr was there, and I think what's challenging is there's thousands and thousands of dollars were being spent on furniture and repairing the building. Well, if anybody looks at this building, I remember coming in here when I just became a school committee member. We had buckets underneath the roof catching the water. They were, through your own work that you put together, there were doors that were rotted out that the DPW had taken care of. So I think what's important is this. There were not thousands of dollars spent. There were 2 brand-new desks purchased because of 2 brand-new employees, and I think 4 chairs, about $900. So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to put it out there to the entire community. If anybody had ever asked us, we would have looked into it right away. That question was never addressed to us, that how much money are we spending on furniture? You know why? Because we didn't spend any money on furniture up until that point. So I just want to say that when you were asked a question, Mr. Chairman, why doesn't the public get answers, is because the question wasn't asked as it relates to the statement of thousands and thousands of dollars being spent on furniture. So I just want to apologize, Mr. Chairman. That was a tough question and a tough situation to be in, especially when one of the members of FinCon asked you directly, how come you don't answer the question? Well, it's because it was never asked.
Yeah. Also, some of the questions in the past have been asked at a time when we've always said we didn't have the answers because we were still doing investigation. And, some of the times, I responded through the media. I released the former superintendent's settlement. So I gave the answer, but I didn't, I perhaps was negligent, but I didn't get back to the individual that, asked for that. So I think that, the key thing I want to stress is that I'm open to people calling. I'd appreciate if you wait till the sun comes up, because I get some pretty early calls. But, we're, as an administration and a school committee, we're trying to make sure that people know what's going on. So,
just to elaborate and follow up on that, you're absolutely right. I just think this. I think the school committee and the school department, for the past year, it's been a really uphill battle. There's been a lot of, how do I describe, heat in the kitchen. And it's easy just to look at the school committee or the school department and say there's a lot of mismanagement taking place. All I want people to do is take a break, take a breath. We have a new superintendent. We have a new business director. Just don't be afraid to ask questions before something's said out in public. Give us a chance to respond. And also, there is full transparency. You're hearing it right here. And you're hearing the fact that there wasn't thousands of dollars, that there was 2 desks and 4 chairs for a total of less than $3,000, 25 and change. So having said that, if we could just have a chance to right the ship, because we're heading in the right direction. So let's look at it in a positive way, not automatically in a negative way from the public perception. Just give us a chance, public, right?
right.
Just as kind of anecdotal evidence, one of the things I was thinking about and I wanted to talk to the committee about in my former district to try to alleviate issues like this, because the public does have questions and they want to know, school-related issues as well as, say, a financial issue, whether they're involved in schools or not. We set up a link on off our website. It was called Voice a Concern or Ask a Question. I forget what it was. And you could click on the link, and there's a pull down. Do you want to voice a concern? Do you want to ask a question, whatnot? But basically, it was a quick little form that they filled out, and it got routed to someone in the school administration to file a response. But it was a way for the district to also kind of track inquiries when they came in, to create a log of the questions or the issues. I don't know if this committee would be interested in me exploring something like that as a way to just kind of create that vehicle, a mechanism for the public to, without having to come to a meeting or without having to, make a statement and have folks either feel like they're on the defensive or they don't have the information at that time. By all means, if you don't get a response or if you don't like the response, that obviously bring it to the next level. But just for those simple questions that come up, maybe we could create a mechanism like that. It helps us also, because then even when we're trying to do PR or planning for the following year, you can look at that log and say, well, you know, the same person or the same topic came up 10 times. Maybe there's something we need to do about PR or communication with families that we're not covering properly. And it just gives you some data to make some decisions with that affect the parents of the community or family. So I will have a conversation with our tech group, who seems very willing to help out in any way, and also bring some of those forms that we used electronically in the other districts to route information. And I think the key also is when someone does make the request, there's a record in the district of that request coming in, but also the response gets pinned. So when the information request comes in, whatever the written response from the district is gets attached and gets recirculated to that same group that received the voice of concern or the ask a question, almost like an app. So I will work on that if that's something the committee thinks would be of value or interest, and report back out in a month or so if that looks like it might be fruitful and work here.
I think that's absolutely a brilliant idea. Also gives the public a forum, you know, anytime, any opportunity they have, they can voice their concern. There's a log of it. We can address it, and we can also hold people on our end accountable by saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Lang, this person submitted a question a week ago, 2 weeks ago. How come they're not getting a response to exactly what was the concern at the FinCom meeting? How come we're not getting responses? So I think we should absolutely do that, and as fast as we can.
Just want to make a clarification. Mrs. Jackson had never asked us that question before. She said she came to the FinCom because in the past she had asked us questions and we didn't respond. So she was there asking a question she had or that had not been asked before. So, you know, I don't want it to get all muddled. You know, we have not avoided answering her question. We had not heard her question before. So
That's a great point. That's a great idea, Jay. I would, Dr. Lang, I would really like for us to look into that portal.
Well, then your conversation becomes less about did you respond. It's like how long is it, what's acceptable then as a district for response time. You know, it might start out that it's 2 weeks, and then you know it's a week, and you have at least some measurable goals to try to target. And so I'll do that, and I'll report back in about a month or so.
On our end also.
It is. Well
said.
All right, thank you.
We received, as most of you probably saw, a letter asking for information this afternoon, which so we'll get a chance to do that right away, do it again, come up with the answers. Okay, thank you. Old business, anything that we need to get back to?
Just want to bring you up to speed. The last committee meeting we had, we talked about fundraising. Barbara and I are on a subcommittee to look into that and gather information. We've reached out together and spoke with Bob Russo personally, and who handles all the accounts. We've also spoke to the athletic director. With the help of Dr. Lang, he's allowed us to have access to the teachers that also, and the coaches that also manage these accounts or collect these monies. So we're working on it, and we expect to have some real questions and real answers for the board, and a very good understanding of the fundraising, which will also lead to the fundraising of the turf fields, because Dr. Lang is really turned into a burdensome for our athletic department, our athletic director, and we're actually missing opportunities. I'm here to relay that as a result of all the calls that come in, because we have two fields, sometimes we miss a window that we could be renting the fields because these people are calling our AD on the weekends, on Sunday morning, and by the time he gets back, the customer says, we've already gone somewhere else. So that's part of a program that Barbara and I are looking into, and hopefully we'll be able to get you answers very shortly.
I'd just like to comment on a related issue. I'm a member of Rotary, as most of you know, and we received a request from Pop Warner to provide some funding, particularly for students that aren't able to pay the user fee, which we were glad to do. But I made the organization aware how many youth teams there are in town with the same issue. So just so you know what we will be doing, we want to be able to do this, but we're going to do one major organization a year, because that's, you know, we'd love to do all of them, but that's not beyond the scope of our fundraising. So just so anybody that's involved with that knows, you can come to us, but we're only going to be able to do one major organization a year.
just as an aside, I talked to the athletic director, and Mr. Moreau said You know, I was saying we need to come up with a way to, you know, kind of formalize this fundraising and such, and you said, well, just give me $70,000 and we can do away with all fundraisers. So just to get the community an idea, they raise about $70,000 every year to cover costs, and that's a chunk of money, so.
Anything else under old business? Okay, that was sort of a liaison report. I know we have at least one other liaison report.
I just have one quick thing to say.
Yeah.
On September 30th at 7 o'clock in the McCarthy Cafeteria till 9 o'clock, the Council of Chelmsford Schools will be hosting an introduction with Dr. Lang and Mrs. Cresta, just to say welcome to our community and to kick off the new year.
Great.
I'll make that announcement frequently.
One more thing, under old business.
Uh-huh.
Chairman Thomas,
Yes.
I know Dr. Lang is being asked several questions about the use of the fields through youth organizations and potential signage. I know you're working on that. You and I had a conversation that you were getting back to the responsible parties that are handling that. So I look forward to hearing your decision, but more importantly, if you'd like to get together and ask more questions, I'd be happy to do that, sir.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. I'm actually kind of doing some fact-finding at this point. I have a meeting a little later on in the week with one of the youth organizations to find out about, you know, their use and how things are set up. Meeting tomorrow with the athletic director for information as well. Trying to see if there are any agreements in place in writing, or if most of this has just been kind of, you know, handled kind of anecdotally over time, just through informal agreements. And you know, if not at the September 1st meeting, definitely that second meeting in September, I should have information for you, but I'll certainly reach out in the meantime and fill you in with what I find.
You'll find our policy specifically addresses the issue too. We have a policy that addresses
Several policies.
Several.
I want you to know that just by coincidence, I spearheaded the construction of that field house, to which the policies or the documents are describing. I can speak absolutely to that, so that might be something at your convenience. I can support you and answer any questions and maybe shed some light on it, but naturally with everything there's a backstory.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rigney or Ms. Scar?
Yeah, the liaison report from the maintenance subcommittee.
That was a terrific meeting.
It
It really was. That was really, might have been the best meeting I've ever been to. It was pointed, it was professional, it was just a great meeting.
was a good meeting.
I'll trade you policy subcommittee.
Not a chance. You've got the minutes on it. There's at least one thing that I think ought to be fleshed out a little bit more. Probably a couple, but I think the big one is talking about setting up some kind of a space and usage survey that would feed into both a capital plan and kind of just how we do business within the district. The town manager indicated that he thought money would be available to fund something along the lines of the survey that was done in Lowell a couple of years ago, and I know Dr. Lang worked hard with that. But we need to be moving on this as a committee. I think the town manager would like to bring it to fall town meeting. That means we have to have it into the warrant process. The recommendation was that we be ready to talk about it on or about Labor Day, which is coming up. I mean, we're going to need to talk to the selectmen about it. We're going to need to talk to the finance committee about it. It's not as simple as just showing up the evening of town meeting and saying, here it is. And Dr. Lang, I've spoken with you about it. You've also talked with the town manager, I believe.
I did. We had a meeting, just an introductory meeting last Thursday to kind of get up to speed on different issues in the district and the town. And one of them he expressed his interest in supporting was a kind of a comprehensive study or review of the school facilities space needs, things of that sort. And we actually have just gone through a very similar process in Lowell over about the last year and a half or so, because we knew we were looking for MSBA funding and support for a new high school in the town. We also felt a kind of a space crunch in the elementary schools, and we knew that that population was moving to middle school a few years later, and we needed to get a good handle on our existing space, our feeder patterns among the schools. It's a little different here because you have clearer delineations around neighborhoods and what schools folks go to. But we really wanted to be in the best position we possibly could to be eligible for MSBA funding. Lowell receives about an 80% reimbursement rate for funding. I think Chelmsford is about 50%, but it's still very difficult to pass a 50% reimbursement on funding. And you want to make sure that you actually have a very comprehensive capital plan and kind of a strategic plan for your facilities as much as you would have for your academic programs in the district. So we underwent about a 9 or 10 month study, issued an RFP to a firm, OMR Architects, won the award, and they came in and they worked with our district and soup to nuts did a comprehensive assessment of the current facilities, all the systems within the facilities, the HVAC, the engineering, the mechanical, to help us twofold really, look at lining up for an MSBA application, because the more information you have behind your application, and the fact that it's coming from more of a third party as opposed to the district citing these concerns makes your application that much more attractive to the SBA when it gets there. And you also know that there are some elements that just aren't going to be covered under the MSBA funding, but you need to get them into a city or a town capital plan. You don't want to let building needs really go, or have a roof fail on you and you had no idea it wasn't even in someone's plan. So we ended up spending about $300,000 in Lowell for this plan. It also looked at current facilities and MSBA guidelines on recommended educational uses. So it lined up, classroom spaces as we currently have them to what the standard is, to help kind of make the argument both at the state and city level, or town level in this case, for improvements in facilities. I think something, and I think the town manager expressed his interest, something similar to that is really just ripe for here, particularly when you're looking at, how is full-day kindergarten going to impact schools. At your middle schools, there's two of them, concerns about existing building conditions and wanting to have newer and more up-to-date science labs. It'll roll right to the high school. I would estimate a similar project would probably cost in the $175,000 range here. Less buildings, but you also lose some economy of scale because you get different folks coming out to do different projects. But I did have that first conversation with the town manager. I'm going to have a follow-up conversation later this week. And I think we really have to talk about, if we're going to get in line for that town meeting for the article to come out in October, would it make sense to issue an RFP and kind of go through the process like Lowell did in anticipation of getting funding in October, and actually, kind of know who the firm would be, what the dollar amount for the project would be, and a very clear idea to sell to town meeting. It wouldn't be hypothetical at that point. They would know what they're getting for the money if they agree to it, and then also if they agree to the money in October, you already have the RFP done, you're not wasting 30 or 45 days, and you're actually just doing a contract award, and someone conceivably could start the work November 1st. So your work is happening all through the winter and spring, and by the time you actually get around to kind of the spring budget and planning for the following year's capital, you actually have a concrete plan to show you where you should be investing your money. And I kind of spearheaded that initiative in Lowell. Would be very much happy to do it here. It's an element to the work that I really like, and I think it's just really right with a lot of the projects you have going on. Timing-wise, it's great that the town manager supports it. In the scheme of things, yes, $150,000 to $200,000 is a lot of money. But really, it's a good investment in, if you're going to put millions of dollars into capital, in the end, it's a wise investment to make sure you're really putting your money in the right places. So I'll be having a follow-up conversation with him on that, but I really do think the timing as well. And like I said, we could put that together pretty quickly. So we'd have something ready to go out to bid after Labor Day, because I've already been through it once.
There was a good deal of conversation that kind of touched upon that point, and you've mentioned some of it. Something like this is going to affect how we think about kindergarten. It's going to affect how we think about whether or not we're reopening the Westlands, it affects how we think about what the sending districts are, or if we choose a different plan for the middle schools. It also would affect the food services. That was another point of discussion there. Clearly, we have kind of a preliminary direction from April Lasky. We have a new food service person now, but there's going to need to be some capital expenditure there. So as we build this 10-year capital plan, the results of this kind of space survey will feed into that, will inform that as well. And I think the other thing that we spent a good deal of time talking about was the situation with the pods. And that goes straight to the building project and how we need, what we need to do. I think there's genuine concern from the town manager that this is going to take a long time. I think what they're expecting is a 5-year cycle from beginning to actually getting the work done. And what we're seeing is that some of the pods already, maintenance work needs to be done at South Row. Ms. Canavan has taken that project on this summer, but we are now at a point where we are doing what amount to temporary fixes. Ms. Canavan has worked out essentially a 5-year plan to do the necessary maintenance to keep the pods running. But at what point do you start putting good money after bad? We have to get these larger building projects rolling. We are not a district that's going to be building new buildings, but that doesn't mean we don't have to do maintenance. So again, I think doing the survey is a great first step. If you look at that Lowell survey, it is a fantastic document. There were something like 12 citizens on the committee as well. I don't know that we'll necessarily have quite as large a committee. We're not as big a community as Lowell is, but to get not only input from the schools and from the town, but various citizens as well, I think it helps build buy-in. I think it helps inform the debate at town meeting. This could be a very good project.
I have to tell you the truth, I think it's a brilliant idea. And why? Because I don't know anybody that has any kind of an organization that has buildings or maintenance or anything more important, especially than our kids, and not have a program in front of exactly what our kids need. I think some of our biggest problems that we have is it appears that we spring things on, or in the past, we've sprung things on at town meeting. Well, we need this. Well, if we had something like this, the public would absolutely know these are our problems, this is what we need to fix, this is our time frame that we want to fix. And when you talk about food services and space planning and maintenance, I think that's an absolutely great idea. I'd love for us to look into it a little bit more, Dr. Lang, especially that you have a background with this. One more question. When you talk about food services and space planning, and Committee Rigney, this might be something for you, Mike. Do they also talk about the outside of our properties? Because how many times have we heard the exterior of our buildings, the lawns and the curbing and the asphalts? Do they also take that into consideration and put a program together for that, or is that that's really through the town and Paul's?
I guess anything's fair game. They would look at like traffic patterns and traffic configurations, going in and out of schools. They would look at, physical walkways to make sure that there's no kind of tripping hazards, things of that sort. We didn't have them look into like the lawn care or the landscaping. That would normally fall under whatever your contract is. If you either do it in-house with custodial staff or if you do it outsourced with a private company. The regular maintenance stuff would come from that. We had a couple of schools that actually wanted to do more kind of outside classrooms. There's been a little trend in actually doing like outdoor learning spaces, and some of that does involve some capital, so that actually would fall into the plan. But the general maintenance, some of the concerns I've heard is basic, cutting the grass, weed whacking, things of that sort. That wouldn't be in the plan.
I think it's more than that, though, Dr. Lang. If you look at some of our schools, you see curbing is smashed. You see sidewalks are all broken up.
That's totally good. That would be in the plan.
I think that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that you could do. Yeah.
I think it's a great idea, Mike.
Yeah, I think this is something we need to be pushing ahead. Like I said, the timeline is somewhat aggressive. But I think once you talk to Ms. Cresta, if we would be ready to discuss authorizing an RFP at the first meeting in September, I think that starts to move us along quite nicely.
And just as an aside, I had the pleasure of going into the McCarthy pods, which are literally the seams are being reinforced with duct tape, which changes depending on the season or the sport that's being played. But the teachers are buying that, to keep the seams closed. And I know there are stories at Parker underneath their pods where wildlife has found themselves trapped and passed away, and the odor rises up into the classrooms. So these are not the best solutions.
They were never meant to be.
20 years ago
permanent
when they were a
solutions.
10-year solution.
They are temporary additions, and they were added about 20 years ago,
Yeah.
and they're at the end of their expected lifetime. So I think, again, we don't want to be in a position where we're surprising people, but it is certainly time to address the condition of the temporary additions.
The temporary were 10 years. That was their lifespan. We've more than gotten our money out of these.
And that's what this, Mike, that's what this survey would do. It would educate and let everybody know exactly what's going on with all our assets that we have in our system.
As we just recently saw, we have a tri-board meeting coming up. I guess 21st.
Of September.
Yeah. I was going to mention it
I'll
at
add
the end
that.
anyway. Well, the most recent thing, it had gone through like 4 or 5 exchanges of discussion with other people, so the initial invitation was at the bottom of it. But anyway, I guess my question is, what, and I don't expect a complete answer now, but what do we need to have done going into that night? It would seem to me, in this and perhaps other areas, we need to be prepared. And like, I sense that we might need a workshop, maybe after the next meeting, after school gets going. But
Well, I
I
think
saw your reaction.
we already have something planned after the next
Okay.
meeting, right? We might need to, if you want to have a workshop, and I'd be fully supportive of that, we might.
I don't really care how we get things done, but I want to, it seems to me, we've got one meeting before the tri-board meeting, and I want to go in there if we have certain things we want to have ready. I want to go in ready.
That's right.
Yeah, I would say that this early tri-board, because it wasn't something that was done a couple of years ago. Last year was the first time we tried to do a tri-board kind of at the end of the summer. It is, I think, an appropriate time to kick off the FY17 budget cycle. I mean, my goal would be to get some visioning work done at that point in the cycle rather than final concrete objectives. Last year there was a lot of discussion about the various priorities. I think we expressed our priorities. Members of the Finance Committee expressed their priorities, and we also heard from the Board of Selectmen on their priorities as well. Do you think we need to do more than that?
No, if that's what we're doing, I'm sure that'll fill the meeting. If I don't know.
I think to Al's point, though, Mike, I'd really like to have a discussion with Dr. Lang and all of us together, really have some concrete ideas and some issues that we have to when we go in there, because hopefully these tri-board meetings will also lead to other meetings with the departments that aren't necessarily quarterly or twice a year or anything like that. I think we should go in there very prepared, to your point, of exactly what we're looking for, the things that we need
Maybe
to
we could
discuss.
even do it at the next meeting just because
Yeah,
right
it can
now
be
we
done
just
as an
listed.
agenda item.
Yeah, we listed several things that we need to, that we're concerned about. So if we could get it done there, that's fine. I
The
don't
earlier
need.
we start talking about things that we need, the better off the public
Yeah.
is, the better off everybody is.
But I think it would be appreciated by everybody at that meeting if we had one presentation instead of 5 presentations from the school committee about what our priorities for the coming year are. So, yeah, we could certainly do that kind of preparation and have some discussions and come up with a unified set of goals.
I don't think it's a wish list and Christmas list. I think it's 2 or 3 concrete things that are important to the kids, important to the school department that we need to discuss, and we'll vet it out and then articulate it when we get there.
Well, I think one of the things we do need to do is set goals for the school year anyway. And yeah, I think like you say, this is not pie in the sky stuff. This is what are we gonna work on over the next 6 months or the next 9 months, in terms of building a budget. So, yeah, they should be concrete, they should be achievable. And we can do that as part of our own goal-setting process.
What was the date of the tri-board, the 21st?
Yes,
Here?
I assume.
This is the only real big room.
Yeah.
FinCom feels really big sometimes.
Sure.
Jump in for a second.
Big last week.
So we've got really 2 meetings before that. We've got the meeting on September 1st because of the way the calendar falls. Then we do meet 2 weeks later on September 15th.
Oh, it is.
So we actually do have 2 meetings before the 21st. We also have that FinCom meeting on the 17th, and I'd like to, probably on the 1st, present whatever agenda items we're going to want to address at FinCom. So as Michelle is gone, the 15 should be closed. We should have our first look at 16 budget-wise. Any adjustments or amendments to grants, things of that sort will be coming in. So I'd like to talk on the 1st a little bit. One of my agenda items will be to kind of talk about the preparation for the FinCom meeting on the 17th.
Okay.
And then we could spend both nights. We could maybe do a dry run on the 1st, but whatever we need to follow up with on the 15th to kind of finalize the agenda items for the tri-board on the 21st. But again, this is new to me, the concepts. But I would think we'd need to have on the 21st a pretty clear indication of any of the warrant articles that are coming up from the schools, to talk with them about it at the 21st, if they're going to come up a few weeks later in October. Would you do that?
I think that's probably a little late, actually. I don't know that we'll have any warrant articles aside from trying to fund this survey.
Is that the only one?
It's the only one I'm
Carl is
aware
usually
of.
not us.
I suppose if there were some free cash to be distributed, but it's not the end of the year. That's going to be held until the spring anyway.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're focused more on the Springtown meeting with the budget presentation in terms of what we want to put forward at tri-board.
Okay.
That said, we probably should be looking at, and Al, maybe you want to reach out to the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen if they would like a presentation from us as they consider the warrant articles. We
And
might,
Tom's gonna say yes.
yeah.
He's gonna say yes.
And so that might be the 17th.
Was there a placeholder? Did Paul put a placeholder?
Yes,
He-
well, in
he-
his list
yeah.
I saw
Yeah, I
it,
thought so.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's why he's looking for, I think,
Yeah.
for us to move ahead with this. Yeah, I think I'm a little vague on the exact calendar for the town meeting warrants. Typically, FinCom looks at it a couple of weeks before, or maybe even just 1 week before town meeting, and the Board of Selectmen, I think, looks at them, the meeting, whatever meeting they have ahead of that for the fall. There's just not that many articles usually.
No.
Okay. This is just new to me, so I'm just trying to
Paul's
It'll take you
get the
about
speed
4
up on
months
that.
to figure this out, though.
Okay. So it's not as scary as it sounds?
No.
But, so we do have 2 meetings, 2 regularly
Yeah,
scheduled
that's
meetings
good.
anyway in
Yeah.
September, which should work out okay.
Great.
Was there anything else in the maintenance or facilities that you wanted to mention?
Anything else you want to bring out right now?
No, there were a lot of great ideas,
Right.
but I don't want to, get anyone's blood going. No, better to keep it quiet.
Okay.
Fully baked is better than half
Yeah,
baked.
that's right. But very exciting.
It was a good meeting in terms of kind of a back and forth.
Yeah.
We don't have it per se. Any new business? Since it continues, or anything else you want to get done?
I know, I don't have anything else tonight.
Okay. There's no one here from the press, so I guess we don't have any press questions. If there's no further business, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, aye? Aye. All those opposed? We're adjourned.